Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, the 12th day of September, and I am Mayor Chris Jensen here with my good friend, the owner of Pathways to Healing Counseling here in Noblesville, Kristen Boyce. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen. I am thrilled to be here with you this morning.
We are always honored to have you, and we're always so honored to have all of our friends from around the world join us for another edition of Mental Health Monday. A quick history of Mental Health Monday. We are now about 2.5 years into this conversation around mental health, which, Kristen, I'm sure you feel the same way. Is hard to believe we've been doing the show for 2.5 years.
I cannot believe it.
Yeah, and it really, I give you massive props. You're the one who kind of pressed me and encouraged me in the middle of a pandemic to see if we want to go on Facebook and talk about mental health. And it's been an incredible ride ever since. I hear about the program as I travel the state and talk to folks from all over. So thank you again for pushing me out of my comfort zone. And hopefully I can challenge you a little bit too. And we're challenging everybody else to have an open dialogue and talk about mental health here in our lives.
That's the goal, to
The
normalize
goal.
this and
Yep.
make it more accessible and available and connect. Everybody wants to belong and connect, and this is how we do it.
Yep, this is a way for a lot of people who kind of want to dip their toe in the water can do so with us here today. So we're excited. We're going to have a great show this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about stress. There's a lot of stress and overwhelm. Kristen, you and I were kind of talking off screen a little bit about the amount of overwhelmed feelings are going on in people's lives. We're back to school. We're heading towards the winter months here before too long. That always has some thoughts with it. Kids' sports are up in full gear. I can tell you at the Jensen house, we are soccer, basketball, horseback riding, dance, and tennis all in a day's work. And it can be a little overwhelming at times. I'm sure it's the same way at the Boyce household as well, with the multiple plays and musicals that you guys are juggling over there as well. So we'll talk a little bit of that. And then we're going to kind of end with a segment focused on self-doubt, which I think is a really key thing that a lot of people are working on, but kind of focused on maybe what causes self-doubt, ways to overcome self-doubt. So a lot of great meaty topics we're going to dive into today. But before we tackle anything, as always, we start with a square breathing exercise. I'll let you take it from here, Kristen.
Thank you. First thing we're going to do is put our feet on the floor. This helps you come back to center. You want to feel regulated when you're having a hard conversation, when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and when there's self-doubt. This is the first step I'm going to teach and this is what I teach to every client. We're going to learn how to deep breathe to come back to ourselves and our higher level of thought, our rational thought, and feel more regulated in our nervous system. So feet on the floor. You can stand up and do this anywhere you are, or if you're sitting down, you're going to press into your feet. We're going to inhale through our nose, and that allows us to kind of pull the belly to the spine and then release slowly out our mouths like we're cooling soup or blowing out birthday candles, however you want to look at this. So let's do 2 breaths together. So big inhale through our nose. We're going to hold for a moment, and then we're going to release. Did a lot of this over the weekend. Continue to do a lot of this. So I can just feel my nervous system. So check in with your nervous system and feel the difference. And I encourage people to do 4, 5, 6 breaths, depending your own nervous system. So let's do one more together. Big inhale through your nose. And release. Feel myself kind of coming back to center, feeling a little bit more calm. And once you continue to practice this every hour, you'll have a better insight on what works for you and how many breaths you'll need. And sometimes you need more, and sometimes 1 or 2 get you where you want to feel more centered and calm and connected in your body.
I have been working on this the last couple of days because I was at an Orange Theory class last week where I think it was there, or maybe you, one of the two, had talked about how on a normal given day, if we don't take a deep breath, we're not getting to the bottom of our lungs and pressing all that air out of there. And so it's important to stop and take those deep breaths. Because if not, we're focused on shallow breathing, which is not helping us process our emotions and process through that. That might have been you who maybe even told me that. I can't recall. But so I've been focusing a lot this weekend and last week on deep breathing, trying to visualize the air from the bottom of the lungs forced up and out. So there you go.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yep.
I love visualizations. That helps cue your brain
Yep.
and really embrace the process.
Love it. Embracing the process. I love that. So, before we get started on a conversation around stress, which we all can learn something from, again, if you have any questions this morning or any comments or just want to say hi, feel free to type that in the chat. Always love to know who's watching, or if you have any questions, or like I said, just want to say hi, let us know. We love that and love to hear from people. I hear from folks on the streets all the time. So I know you're on there on the other side of this video. So let us know. But let's talk about stress. Everyone has it. It manifests itself differently in everybody. So I thought maybe we could start with, what does stress look like? And that might be a what you might think is an obvious question, but I bet there's different ways that it shows itself that maybe we don't even think about. And then we'll kind of talk about some management programs around that.
I like to think of stress in a different way that you might not have thought about it before. And this is why I love growing, because it's, if you hear something and it resonates with you, or you kind of expand yourself, I want you to think about stress along the developmental continuum. What does that mean? What might be stress for an infant and a toddler and an elementary school student or child, a teen, a middle schooler, in their 20s, maybe a college student. Then as we're launching, then as we're getting our jobs, then we have a family, or we have losses and transitions that come into play, retirement. We have a lot of life transitions, which come with a lot of stress and feeling of overwhelm. And it depends on where we are on that continuum emotionally. So what does that mean? So we call, what we have called is arrested development. It's not the show. I know we've talked about this before. This is where you might have had a life event at a certain age, and it kind of, if you didn't get to process the emotions, the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations, and maybe you weren't, the brain wasn't fully developed, because it's not developed and fully developed until we're 25. Maybe we feel a little emotionally stuck at a certain age. So this is important for us to recognize that that plays into how stress shows up for us and how we learn to handle it. What did we watch growing up? Did we watch a parent shop, drink, get angry, maybe go into a rage? Maybe they shut down. Maybe they had health issues, and not just because of stress. Maybe there were some other things going on. Maybe they were workaholics. When we look at how did we learn how to manage stress, guess what? We're starting to teach this in school, but most of us didn't get the lesson on how we manage stress. We didn't know that life transitions, even changing, how old we are. My daughter just celebrated a birthday. There's a transition there. It may seem like another day, but there is another transition that's happening developmentally in the body, the mind, the emotions, the environment. And we have to take a look at, okay, now how do I teach people how to recognize stress? Because sometimes we're just, like, I call it sleepwalking through our lives. We don't even know we're stressed. We kind of feel it. We're like, well, this is just how it is. I got to get the kids ready. I got to get myself ready for work. And we're kind of in what we call the rat race, but we're not really slowing down to connect to, how do I feel? So what do I emotionally feel? What is overwhelming me? Where do I need to set some boundaries? What are boundaries? What's okay? What's not okay? But I think of boundaries as energy. So if I'm low on energy, what am I giving my energy to? And where do I need to have some boundaries? We didn't really learn this as children, because some of us, most of us, we didn't have the vocabulary to say how we felt. We didn't know that it was okay to maybe set a boundary, to say, hey, mom and dad, maybe I don't want to do that. If sport, maybe I don't want to participate in this XYZ thing, and the parents have a different agenda. We didn't have a voice, and we might not have even recognized it. But as adults, it's important that we're recognizing, what do we have on our plates? What am I saying yes to that is taking away my energy towards what my priorities are, which might be my mental health. It might be my physical health. It might be my family. What's taking me away from, so I call it like a pruning. What do I need to prune out that is no longer serving my energy level? What is zapping my energy that is not pouring in kind of, think of it as a power plant, like what's sucking the energy dry, and how do I refuel the power plant? What is giving me that energy? And one is, we've got to get sleep. These are kind of common ones that we know about, but we really like kind of go, okay, whatever. Sleep, eating right, water intake, movement. These are kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then we have to start pruning out things that don't serve us or don't serve our families anymore. And that's where it gets hard. And if I don't set those boundaries, my energy is going to be super low because I am depleted. I don't have enough to give.
Could you maybe walk through, because I'm thinking through like even my life, and Julie Jensen and I were talking about that this weekend a little bit about just kind of maybe saying no more, and kind of pruning is a great way of putting it. But there are some things that are just things we have to do. I mean, so can you walk through maybe some questions we should ask ourselves about certain things to kind of help us prune? Would that be something you could help out with?
That's a great question, because one, think of pruning like when you prune plants. Okay, they have to be cut back. How do we know what to cut back, what's necessary to cut back, what we don't want to cut too much off, because then it won't grow and thrive in the soil. So this is kind of a metaphor for what is necessary. And write this out. You're going to take a sheet of paper. I keep a journal with me at all time, or a piece of paper. I love these little books that you can keep, or you can do it in your phone. And you're going to go, okay, you're going to make a list of what is an absolute yes that I have to do. I have to do the laundry. Okay. You can outsource that, but that's going to cost you, right? You have to do the laundry. You have to, make sure the house is, or your apartment or wherever you live, is taken care of. I have to brush my teeth, do some hygiene. That's necessary. Sleep is necessary. Like, people think, well, I don't need that much sleep. Actually, science says we need at least adults need at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep to function optimally. So that's a non-negotiable. Now, so that would be in the has to category. Then you make another list on the what's optional, or I could prune back, but my fear of pruning back. So then if I put the optional, the next column is what is your fear around letting that go. And a lot of times it's disappointing someone, making someone upset. They're going to think I'm not doing a good job. They're going to think I'm less than. They're going to think I'm not contributing. It's all people pleasing and what we call fawning. It's a survival response we learned a long time ago, but we're afraid of what other people, their reaction, or what they're going to think of us most of the time.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to kind of walk through, because again, it is so easy to just for you and I to say it like, oh, just prune back, but we all know that we have responsibilities. We know that that's just not a reality. So we try to speak on this show in particular about realities and how to walk through that. So I appreciate that exercise, because I think it's easier said than done going forward. So okay, you've pruned your life, you've made some key dialing back decisions, still kind of working through those feelings within your body. Can we talk a little bit about stress relieving activities, how to manage kind of just our existing stress that may not go away? Because I think it's key too, and you can probably chime in that all your stress is not just going to go away. It's not. It's a fact of life. It's there. So in the moment, I mean, can we walk through some ideas on that?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is you got to recognize that it's in your body. If you don't recognize it's in your body, then you're going to have your body will start screaming at you and shutting down. That's one of the most important things I can say, is if you're disconnected from your nervous system and you're disconnected from what you're feeling in your body, that stress is going to manifest. And that's the most important thing. So connecting to your body, what is your body telling you? Ask, what is my body telling me? What am I feeling? And then I like activities such as music. That's so great for your nervous system. Think about the sensors, your 5 senses. This is very important. That helps with stress. So do you need to light a candle, or maybe essential oils, something where you're smelling lavender, something where your nervous system can go, oh, okay, that's a comfort to my nervous system. What are you listening to? Are you listening to things that are stressing you out? Can you put some music in? Maybe you need just some calming sounds. Maybe it's sounds of the nature, the ocean, or something like a sound machine. That's very helpful. In our office at Pathways, we have sound machines, 1 for noise reduction, and 2 because we know scientifically it helps calm the nervous system. It's like being in utero with the calming sounds. So sound machines are very helpful to have in your environment. So guess what? I brought them home and now we have sound machines everywhere because I'm a firm believer in those five senses. What are you watching? What are you putting into your nervous system? I have some clients that they can't watch crime shows. We've talked about this. They can't listen to the news. It's too activating in their nervous system. Are they watching something that feels good to them? Maybe it's a funny movie. Maybe it's an uplifting show, something inspiring. Podcasts. Are you listening to something that helps you grow, learn, and maybe develop some of these skills that you didn't get earlier? Those thinking about your five senses and then movement. So outside, we know nature through research helps calm the nervous system. So if we go outside, we take a walk, we pet our pets, we look at animals, whatever, unless you have a trauma around that, then we know that the nervous system helps recenter and recalibrate. And then we talked about nutrition and those things on top of it. But I like to frame it with the sensory system. That helps the brain go, oh, what am I listening to? What am I putting in my body? Using the senses to calm and manage the stress. And then the other thing that is super important that I don't think we talk about enough is relationships. Like, what kind of, are you able to talk to somebody? Are you able to vent and go, I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to make me feel better. I just need a vent. And then the person goes, okay, I can just listen. Having a support system in place is super important for managing stress. Because I like to come home and I like to just say, I just need to process that. You don't need to fix it. And my husband's like, okay, good. I can just listen. I'm off the hook. I say it up front, and then he kind of knows what I need. Or maybe I say, hey, I just need you to acknowledge that I'm overwhelmed right now. And then I have to check in with asking for help. Where can I ask for help or seek resources to help me? It might be I need help at home. It might be I need a 12-step program. I need to join, or watch some videos on exercise, a yoga program. Where do you need to ask for help? That's the other piece that's so important.
What's a common misconception when it looks like for stress relief? I always think about those like self-medication and those strategies that aren't maybe as helpful to the situation as you might think.
Yeah. So there are some medications that if you're having something going on physiologically,
Yeah.
that can be very helpful to help manage that, what's going on in the nervous system. What isn't helpful is self-medicating through a love addiction. So we think, oh, this unhealthy person that I'm in a relationship with, I'm going to go to them and try to self-medicate with this we call a love addiction. It's like a codependency, meaning my worth and value and lovability depends on how you see me. How are you today? How is your mood? That is not going to be helpful. Turning to alcohol and drugs, of course, that we call that self-medicating, is only pushing it back down into the nervous system, and it doesn't allow you to deal with the pain. We have food addiction, we have work addiction, the list goes on. Those are things that are going to exacerbate how you feel rather than help you feel and deal with the pain so you can free yourself and live in possibility. Those are not going to be helpful. And
Yeah, I think it's
gossiping and those kinds of things, those don't really help you feel better.
No, and I think it's important to name those because especially during the pandemic in particular, I know we saw from the city side, you I'm sure saw it from the mental health side, the amount of self-medication that is now still manifesting itself in a lot of people's lives, and are kind of working. People are trying to work through those right now, coming out of this. So great. Well, stress is always something that we can probably talk about on a monthly basis, Kristen, because it's not going to go away. I do want to turn a little bit here and talk a little bit about self-doubt, because you're hearing that term more and more now, and I'm hoping that because we are getting more open about our mental health and having more open conversations, I've heard it even within my circle of friends, some people talk about self-doubt and then being able to name it in themselves and know about it. I thought that was just awesome. So can you talk a little bit about self-doubt, what that is, what it looks like, and how you kind of work through it?
We all have it. So that's
Mhm.
the other thing. This kind of, we're humans, so we have self-doubt. And preparing for today, I wrote something out. What if we stop looking to others to accept, approve, and appreciate us? because that's what we're doing. We're going into, and I see it with my kids. They'll go, well, maybe I shouldn't have made that decision. Maybe I shouldn't have picked that outfit. Maybe I shouldn't have said that thing to a friend. And that's filled with self doubt. The fear underneath, the shame says you're not enough. The shame says you shouldn't, because we should on ourselves. The shame says you're not good enough. Really, self doubt is rooted in fear of what other people think or making the wrong decision. Like, we're afraid we're going to make the wrong decision, and then there's going to be these enormous consequences. And perhaps we've had an experience where we made a poor decision and that affected us. And the truth of the matter is, we learn from those decisions. It helps shape our journey. I've made so many quote unquote mistakes, which are learning opportunities, and they have been the greatest gifts, as painful as they are in the moment, to me, to expand me, to grow me. Self doubt is an invitation to say what's underneath it. So, if we're looking at the metaphor of pruning and roots, let's go back to that. We have to look at the root of self doubt. Oftentimes, it gets planted very young. So, we're told how we should or shouldn't be by maybe a teacher, a coach, a parent, a grandparent. We get all these messages on how we should or shouldn't be. And then when it comes to decision making, we're filtering all those voices in our heads. And it's almost like we're thinking about what the right decision is. And guess what? You're the one living your life. Nobody else is living your life. And when we center on our truth, which is what we do in therapy, we're like weaning out all these, we're kind of going through the forest of all these voices in your head. So your true voice can emerge. And when you settle on what is true for you, what will work for you, what won't work for you, then our nervous system feels more centered and we feel more calm. We feel more confident to make that decision. It's the voices in our head and the voice of shame saying you should or shouldn't do that, which is fear, that keeps us in that self doubt. How we nurture that is saying, what is the best decision for me? And giving yourself permission to say, it's okay. There is no perfect answer. We think there's this, we really want this outcome. And we think if I make just the perfect decision, or I say the right thing for this person, or I do the right thing for this person, or I caregive, whatever that is, then I won't get rejected, blamed, shamed, or abandoned.
Well, I think to your point, in most things in life, there's very rarely a perfect decision, right? I mean, I'm not talking like turn left, turn right, those type of things, but like when it comes to hypothetical, just life decisions you make, you're going to have, it's never 100%. It's 80% right. And what, I kind of missed this piece of it, or I learned from that piece. And I think part of, from a leadership standpoint, I've tried to always pride myself on, sometimes we have to make the best decision we believe and stand firm on it, but then be willing to kind of adjust in the moment and know that things change and you learn from that. But to your point, I've never not learned from a partially incorrect decision I've made.
Yeah, it's a hard lesson, and regret can be, a powerful teacher, and we
Mhm.
hate that. I
Mhm.
have clients all the time, they're like, "I just don't wanna have regret," and I'm like, "I hear you, and I can't prevent regret. I can just try to get clarity by," and a lot of times I'll write it out, like, what is my fear? What am I struggling with? And embracing what information I have to make the best decision I have is all we can do. And this is a hard one because we have the fear of making the mistake. And when we can go, okay, it's a learning opportunity. Everything's a learning opportunity. And I'm going to own it. I'm going to own, and that's hard because a lot of times we want to blame someone like, well, you thought this was the best decision, so I went with that. And I'm like, okay, well, you left yourself. You abandoned yourself in
Mhm.
that process. Abandoning yourself will lead us down a dead end road. That's where regret comes in. When I knew in my gut that that wasn't right for me, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a decision, a job, it doesn't matter. And you left yourself, you abandoned yourself because you thought this other person had the answer. That's painful.
Yeah, and Jenna Stewart, a good friend of mine, just asked a great question. We think about boundaries with other people, valid. What about internal boundary with our fears, doubts, and sabotage agents? awesome question, Jenna. Per
Yeah.
usual, she has good insight. She has some insights about the Miller football team too, if you ever want to follow her on social media. But anyways, that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about boundaries. So why don't you hit that question up?
Yeah, internal boundaries are so important. So there's a concept called differentiation in family systems. And it's important we get this concept to understand how you can have internal boundaries and talk to that fear and uncertainty and scarcity voice, that shame voice also. So differentiation means it's okay in family systems, or it starts with family systems, to have your own thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and it's not threatening to the system. You still belong. You still feel like it's okay. When we can recognize that you're abandoning your own values, you're abandoning your own truth, and that you can give yourself permission to say, it's okay if this doesn't work for me. And when the fear arises, you can say, okay, I hear you, fear. I'm taking you into consideration, and let me get clear on my truth. Okay, the truth, my body is saying that's not going to be a healthy relationship for me. Or let's say you don't want to do something that's like a volunteer activity. I'm making this up, but checking in with that truth inside you that you weren't allowed to say as a kid because it was scary to the family system and you were disciplined, punished for that. When you can recognize now as an adult that that's healthy, that's healthy for me to say how I really feel. That's healthy for me to have a boundary around that. Only you can give yourself permission to do that. So when you have fear, digging into that, say, what am I afraid of? How old do I feel? That allows you some insight and to nurture that part. It might be like a 7-year-old part that says, I'm so afraid that everybody's going to reject me and I'm going to have no friends, or the family's going to shun me, or whatever. When you can sit with that discomfort and go, okay, no matter what happens, I'm not going to abandon myself. I'm not going to abandon myself. That's the key, because we think the pain is abandonment of other people, which it is, and we have to process that. The deeper pain is when we abandon ourselves because we're trying to belong in whatever system it is. So that's some deep stuff and very
Great.
important.
Yeah, great question, Jenna. I love that. I love that. All right, so we have about a minute left here, so I want to kind of wrap this up. Any other thoughts on self-doubt and kind of where maybe to turn to when they are having some moments of self-doubt? You already mentioned kind of writing it out, probably talking to folks. Any other final thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's one thing I really want to say on research about this, because when we're so afraid of rejection, we are so afraid of rejection. We're so afraid of judgment. And there was a University of Michigan study that did an MRI on folks that had just gone through rejection, and it lit up the exact same way as if you had physical pain. So the brain doesn't decipher the pain level, emotional pain and physical pain. Take that in. The brain is registering that as the same. So if you have a wound and you have self-doubt, it's like the wound, okay? And we don't like physical pain. If we don't go to the doctor, put salve in it, clean it out, tend to it, it's going to get infected. It's the same thing with emotional wellness. So when we feel self-doubt, it's an invitation for us to say there's some part of us that needs certainty, clarity, but we're not going to get that from outside of ourselves. We know through research, seeking reassurance over and over, doing surveys says actually makes you feel less assured. Did you know that? It's fascinating. So the more we can tend to that fear and that self-doubt by writing it out, again, I'm a firm believer talking through it, processing, naming your emotions helps you gain clarity and confidence and calm. That truly is the key, because there is no guarantee. And I hate saying that, but that's the truth. There is no guarantee. And when you can sit in that discomfort and tolerate it, ugh, man, is that hard. And that's the key, is like nurturing ourselves through that, breathing through that, writing ourselves through that. Again, support is so important to help kind of gain that sense of security within yourself. Because if we feel insecure somewhere along the line, we felt insecure younger. And that's just a younger part coming up and inviting us to be tended to, self-compassion, give ourselves some grace and some permission slips to do what we need to do.
And it kind of goes back to basics. We were always taught as a kid, trust your gut, right? And basically, you know, I've gone through where I've tried to make a decision, and you can ask 10 different people. You get 10 different answers, and it leaves you
Yes,
with
guys.
even less clarity, you know, even less clarity. So that's a great point. So, well, this has been awesome between stress and self-doubt, incredible topics. One last thing before you go, if you're in a crisis situation or need help, where do you turn?
988. We love 988. You can text or call. Please don't do this alone. There's tons of resources on the City of Noblesville website as well. There are lots of options out there. Please know you matter, you're important, you're loved, and you're enough. And that shame story wants to take you out of that truth over and over and over.
Yep. Thank you, Kristen Boyce. I appreciate you. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. We'll see you back in a couple weeks with another episode of Mental Health Monday. In the meantime, stay safe.
Thanks.